History is not a story of peace. It is a battlefield where brutality and civilization have always walked hand in hand. To the Aztecs, blood was the price of order, the currency of the gods. To the Vikings, war was not destruction, it was destiny. To the samurai, death was not an end, it was an honor. For centuries, we have called them monsters, barbarians, savages. But was their brutality a sign of ignorance or of mastery? Were they merely destroyers, or did they create something far greater? The answer is not simple, because the same cultures that ruled by fear also built the foundations of our world. They were brutal cultures, yes, but were they also ancient saviors? History is written by the victors, but who decides who the real monsters were? Let's uncover the truth. The Aztecs were one of the most advanced civilizations of their time. Engineers, astronomers, poets, and executioners. Their empire was a masterpiece of science and warfare, yet at its core, it ran on blood. But why? Why would one of the most powerful civilizations on Earth believe that only human sacrifice could keep their world alive? To the Aztecs, the universe was fragile. The sun, their very source of life, could die at any moment, unless it was fed, and the only thing powerful enough to sustain it was human blood. Unlike what many believe, the victims were not always helpless prisoners. Many were warriors, honored captives, chosen for the highest purpose imaginable, to nourish the gods themselves. A single life to ensure the survival of millions. Was it madness, or was it the ultimate sacrifice? When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they saw this ritual not as a sacred duty, but as pure savagery. To them, the Aztecs were demons, their empire an abomination that had to be destroyed. But the Aztecs weren't the only civilization to embrace sacrifice. The Maya, known for their deep understanding of the stars, also believed that blood was a sacred gift to the gods. For the Maya, sacrifice was not just about death. It was a direct conversation with the divine. Their kings and queens bled for their people, believing that their suffering would bring balance to the cosmos. To the outside world, these acts were horrifying, barbaric, inhuman. But to the civilizations who practiced them, they were not just rituals. They were the foundation of existence itself. And yet, their gods did not save them. But in the cold north, a different kind of brutality was unfolding. One not of sacrifice, but of conquest. Meet the Vikings, the savage warriors who defied gods and men alike. To some, they were monsters. To others, they were gods among men. The Vikings were a force of nature, unstoppable, unbreakable, unmerciful. From the late 8th century, these warriors of the north erupted onto the world stage. They plundered, they burned, they slaughtered. No kingdom was safe, no god could protect them. But were they truly godless savages? Or was there a method to their madness? It began with a whisper, the first tremor of a storm that would shake Europe to its core. June 8, 793 AD, the island of Lindisfarne, a peaceful Christian monastery, untouched by war. Until now. This was no ordinary raid, it was a statement. The gods of the north had arrived. For centuries, their homeland had been their prison. The frozen wastes of Scandinavia offered little, no fertile lands, no wealth. For a Viking, there were only two paths, starve or take what they needed. This was no ordinary raid, it was a statement. The gods of the north had arrived, and so they chose the axe, the sword, the longship. But what made the Vikings truly terrifying was not their strength. It was their ships, fast, agile, able to strike anywhere at any time. They were ghosts on the water, and no one knew where they would strike next. Yet to call them mere raiders would be a mistake. The Vikings were not just destroyers, they were builders, explorers, traders. They were a people bound by honor, by loyalty, and by blood. To a Viking, to fight was to live. To die in battle was the greatest honor, because only the bravest, the fiercest, would earn a place in Valhalla. Their raids turned to conquest. Their settlements became kingdoms. Vikings didn't just destroy, they built, they ruled. They shaped history in ways few could have predicted. But even the fiercest warriors cannot fight time itself. By the 11th century, the Viking age was fading. The world was changing. Christianity spread. Kingdoms grew stronger. And the last great warriors of the north faded into legend. But their blood still flows in the veins of the north. and their legacy will never die. But while the Vikings sought honor in death, another brutal culture forged warriors from birth. Their entire lives were training for one thing: war. Welcome to Sparta. Sparta, a name that still echoes through time. A city where weakness was a crime. A culture where mercy was forbidden. To be a Spartan was to be a warrior, or to be nothing at all. From the moment they were born, Spartans faced only one test: survival. If a child was weak, sickly, imperfect, they were discarded, left to die. Only the strongest would live. Some call it brutal. The Spartans called it necessary. At age 7, childhood ended. Boys were torn from their families and cast into the Agoge, the brutal training that turned them into warriors. Hunger, pain, fear, they endured it all, not because they had to, but because they were forbidden to show weakness. Stealing food was a lesson in cunning. Taking a beating in silence was a lesson in discipline. Killing an enemy before they could kill you, that was the most important lesson of all. And at age 12, the real test began. A single mission: survive the wild or die trying. By the time they turned 18, they were no longer boys. They were killers. And for Sparta, they were the only thing that mattered. For a Spartan, war was not just a duty, it was their purpose. And the greatest shame was to surrender. Spartan law was clear: return home with your shield or on it.
Come back with it, or on it.
And then came their greatest moment. Thermopylae, 300 warriors against an empire. A battle that would shake history itself. For 3 days they held the line, 300 against a sea of thousands. And they did not break. They fought until their weapons shattered, until their arms went numb, until the last Spartan took his final breath. They died to the last man, but their defiance became legend.
Sparta was the ultimate war machine, unstoppable, untouchable. And yet, they vanished. For all their power, the Spartans built nothing. No grand monuments, no philosophy, no art, only warriors. And when their enemies evolved, when war changed, Sparta did not. Brutality made them legends. But was it also their downfall? Because while Sparta trained for war, others trained for conquest. Enter the Mongols, the horsemen who would bring empires to their knees. They came like a force of nature, a storm of fire and steel. No walls could hold them, no army could stand against them. The Mongols were not conquerors, they were annihilators. For over a century they shattered empires, leaving only ashes in their wake. But who were these warriors? Savage raiders or strategic masterminds? To understand the Mongols, we must begin with the man who forged them into legends, the child who had nothing, the warrior who took everything, the one the world would come to fear as Genghis Khan. His father was poisoned, his family abandoned, left to starve in the unforgiving wilderness. Most children would have died, but Temujin was not like most children. They tried to break him, they failed. Instead, they created something else, something unstoppable. With nothing but his will, he forged an army. Not from noble bloodlines, but from loyalty, from merit, from the desperate and the broken. He made them believe in one thing: victory or death. And with them, he would carve his name into history. The world thought war was about numbers. Genghis Khan knew better. His army was smaller but faster, smarter, deadlier. Their tactics were revolutionary: deception, psychological warfare. The feigned retreat, luring enemies into ambushes. A city that surrendered was spared. A city that resisted, it was erased from existence. From the Great Wall of China to the gates of Baghdad, from the freezing forests of Russia to the burning sands of Persia. No empire was safe. The Jin dynasty, crushed. The Khwarezm Empire, drowned in blood. The Abbasid Caliphate, erased in a single, merciless siege. It is said they had no fear. Only one force ever made them retreat. But we will get to that soon. An empire built on blood, drowned in it. But what if an empire could last forever? What if instead of war, it thrived on discipline, devotion, and unbreakable loyalty? Enter the samurai, the warriors who lived and died by the sword. In the land of the rising sun, warriors lived and died by a single code: Bushido, the way of the warrior. To be a samurai was not just to wield a sword, it was to dedicate one's life to discipline, to loyalty, to a death without fear. They were not just warriors, they were legends. But What happens when a warrior's greatest enemy is not a rival on the battlefield, but the world that no longer needs him? Long before they became noble warriors, the samurai were nothing more than hired swords, servants of warlords in a land torn apart by chaos. But as warlords fought for control, one thing became clear: only the strongest, most disciplined warriors could survive. And so, a new elite was born. From mercenaries, they became rulers. Their swords no longer served kings, they served only honor. A samurai was nothing without his blade. And the katana was no ordinary weapon. Forged with divine precision, sharp enough to cleave a man in two, the katana was not just a tool of war. It was the very soul of the samurai. But the blade alone did not make the warrior. What truly defined the samurai was the code they lived and died by: loyalty, duty, honor. To a samurai, these were not just words, they were life itself, and to break them was worse than death. A samurai served his master without question, and if that master fell, so too did the warrior. Seppuku, the ultimate proof of loyalty. A samurai would rather die by his own hand than live in disgrace. For centuries, the samurai ruled Japan, but no empire lasts forever, and when the world changed, they did not change with it. The age of the sword was over. The age of the gun had begun. Their time had come to an end, but their spirit, their code, it still echoes through history. They were warriors of honor, soldiers of unbreakable will. From the disciplined Spartans to the relentless Mongols, from the visionary Maya to the fearless Vikings, history is filled with civilizations that walk the fine line between greatness and brutality. Were they saviors or conquerors, pioneers or destroyers? The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. What do you think? Were these cultures a force for civilization, or did their brutal ways define them? Let us know in the comments below. If you love diving into the paradoxes of history, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more epic explorations of the past. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that challenges the way we see history.